Okay, so I'm sitting here with Alan Clark, who is currently on tour with Dire Straits Legacy. Um, Alan is known most prominently for being a keyboardist for the original Dire Straits from 1980 to 1995. And he also worked as a keyboardist for numerous other bands and projects, artists such as Eric Clapton, Rod Stewart, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, and many, many more. He also is a composer of film and TV scores. He is a 2008 inductee in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for his work in the Dire Straits. And in 2021, he released an instrumental album called Backstory. So, hello, Alan, and welcome to Stuttgart.
Thank you.
If you would briefly tell us a little bit about your musical upbringing. I must add, you have a great website, and on this website, in your biography, you talk about that you started piano lessons at age 6, and then actually stopped, and then how did it all go on and kept you going back to the piano?
I got really bored with piano lessons when I was doing them at age 6. I like to play the piano by myself, but go to lessons, it just bored me. Might have been the teacher. I mean, I know that the second teacher I had was really boring, and that's kind of what finished me off, really. I think the first one was kind of interested me, but he retired. In fact, I think he died. Maybe I killed him off. But the second one was really boring, and I just couldn't wait to stop. And I think my sister was taking lessons with me at the same time, so we'd both go on a Tuesday night or whenever it was, and it was just I just hated it. So when I got to the age of 9, I was old enough to say, right, I'm not doing this anymore. And then when I was 11, I think I had appendicitis. So I was in hospital, and they took my appendix out, and that coincided with my father being ill. He'd had a heart attack, and so we were both at home together with nothing to do. You know, we had a TV or something, but there was no daytime TV in those days, and so it was either the radio or nothing. So and we had a piano. So my dad was quite a keen musician. He couldn't play, but he used to try to play, and he was a singer. He sang like Frank Sinatra and that kind of thing. So I heard him trying to play, and I thought I could probably do better than that. I've got to figure out what he's doing wrong. So I got up and started playing, and then we started playing together, and that's how it all began, really. I started teaching myself how to play, and that's pretty much what I kept doing. Although I did start taking piano grades, which is like grade 6, grade 8 and all that sort of thing. So I did those when I was like between 16 and 18, and taking A-level GCEs at school, and I got accepted into the Guildhall School of Music in London. But by then, I'd been playing in working man's clubs since the age of 13 on a Hammond organ, and I was actually so I was working every weekend pretty much from the age of 13. My father would take me, and he loved it. And quite often I'd make more working a weekend than my father made working the whole week as a supervisor at a cable factory.
Wow.
So I always had money. So even when I was like 16 to 18, I was taking A-level GCEs and grade 8 piano and all that sort of stuff. And I had a brand new car. And so the thought of going to the Guildhall School of Music in London and not being able to, then having to abandon all that, playing in nightclubs and stuff, I thought, no, I'm just going to keep going. Excuse me, I have a cold. So that's what I did. I just stopped education, kept playing in nightclubs, and then I thought, well, I'm going to have to take this a bit more seriously. So I started joining bands. And for a while I was in a band with Brian Johnson from AC/DC, which was a reformed version of Geordie. And lasted a while, and then I joined John Miles's band. John Miles,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I was with John Miles for about a year and made £40 in a year. So, but I supplemented that by playing in working man's clubs that just kept me alive. And then I got and because I'd been playing in bands in the northeast of England, I got an offer to join a duo called Splinter, who were signed up with George Harrison's Dark Horse label, and so did a world tour with supporting Greg Allman and Cher. Sorry, a European tour. Excuse me, and that led to I think I was just thinking about this last night. I was trying to figure out how I moved from that situation, but I think one of the crew or the tour manager on that tour was connected to Gallagher and Lyle. So he was I can't remember if he was there. I think he was their tour manager. And so when they needed a keyboard player, he suggested me. So I started playing with Gallagher and Lyle. Did a tour with them. Did an album with them. And that led, when Dire Straits needed a keyboard player, someone in that management suggested me, and that led to Dire Straits, and then it all took off in the right direction.
That's very interesting. And yes, that association with Dire Straits started when they were working on the Love Over Gold album, right?
They just finished recording the Love Over Gold album. They came back to London and started rehearsing for the tour to support that album. And so they needed a keyboard player because they'd been using Roy Bittan from the E Street Band on the record. So I came along, and it all went terribly well, and that was that.
I was going to ask because prior to that album, as far as I know, there were no keyboards on Dire Straits albums, right?
There was one or two that somebody, one of the producers had played or something, but there wasn't nothing of any consequence. Yeah, it was a guitar band, which was great for me because it's like a blank canvas and a bit of direction from Roy Bittan as to which direction to take the keyboards. But I took his keyboards and went in my direction with them.
Okay, and for the older songs, you also sort of put your little keyboard stamp on them when you play them live, or?
Well, it was a blank canvas. I could do whatever I wanted.
I see. Yeah, the keyboard sound in Dire Straits, to me, is like this piano, and also this classic organ sounds like, is it either Farfisa or Vox Continental, like this, like Twisting by the Pool or Walk of Life?
Yeah, that's kind of unusual because most of the organ I use is a classic Hammond B3 with a Leslie speaker. Yeah, but Walk of Life, which just needed something different that was going to cut through. So the story about that is Mark always envisaged, when he was writing that song, a fairground steam organ. So that's kind of what he wanted the sound to sound like, and so that's what we came up with.
Yeah. And also in the early 80s, so just around that time period, from what I understand, Mark Knopfler got you into the job of working on Bob Dylan's album Infidels.
That's right. He was offered the opportunity to produce that album, so he took me along, and it was great. And also you worked on one more album, Empire Burlesque, also with Bob Dylan. Yeah, well, I just happened to be in New York.
Okay.
Popped in to see Bob, who was working on his next album, and he said, "Oh, while you're here, play on." So I played on, I think, 2 tunes, maybe 3.
Okay. What was it like to work with Bob Dylan?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I mean, you hear stories about Bob Dylan that he's difficult to work with, but I found him extremely welcoming and appreciative of what I did, and he had a lovely smile, and I got on great with him. I played pool with him, and I allowed him to win.
Okay. Just to be on the
Pretty-
safe side. We'll actually talk later about two of the songs from It because you included them on your backstory album. Actually, talk about this in a bit. And also in this time period, 1983, you worked with Mark Knopfler on the soundtrack album for the movie Local Hero, in which you also have appearance as a piano player in the movie, right?
That's right, yeah. My first movie role and my last movie role.
How did how did film composing change or inform your musical approach on later projects?
It's the same thing. I bet we try to make this cinematic sort of. In the Love Over Gold album is kind of similar in that respect. I can't remember which came first actually. Did the movie come first and then Love Over Gold? Maybe it did. But I just sort of did very similar things. You know, when you look at Telegraph Road, it's kind of it's got the same kind of atmosphere and orchestration really.
And actually, also in your biography, on your website, you describe that actually the work on the film scores actually led you to. It was the other way around. Yeah, when Dire Straits stopped, you also stopped relatively close to that. You stopped touring and concentrated on TV scoring, so you can stay home and be a parent to your kids, which struck home to me, you know.
By then, 1992, I'd kind of done. I had 12 years of pretty intense, doing world tours with people. So and so we'd had twins, boy and a girl, in 1989. So in 1992, they were 3 years old. I hadn't seen a great deal of them. So I thought, okay, I'm going to spend time with them now, and I turned a few things down to do that. But I still recorded with one or two people. But yeah, I started taking an interest in TV music, and I did a few TV series for the BBC and other stuff. So yeah.
So then, if you fast forward to 2011, you formed. Or were in several new bands, the first being the Straits, which included bassist John Ilsley from the Dire Straits, right?
Originally, yeah. That all began with Marco Caviglia, who is the guitarist who does Mark Knopfler's role in the Dire Straits Legacy, which is where I'm at now. He got in touch with myself and John Ilsley to see if we would play with his Dire Straits cover band in Italy, and it was to open the ski season in northern Italy in the Dolomites on top of a ski mountain. So John and I thought to ourselves, this man's crazy, but yeah, maybe it's crazy enough that it could be fun. So we went along and that's exactly what we did. We played on top of a ski mountain. It was minus something. I had a massive big coat on and fingerless gloves. And we did that, and then we did another one in a nightclub a month later or so, or a couple of months later, and that just and then we did another one in a big outdoor place, and there's about 10,000 people turned up. So I thought, well, there's still a lot of interest in this Dire Straits music, and so then I had the idea of getting a band together with lots of Dire Straits people, and that was the Straits. That lasted for a while, and then I think they're still going, but there's only one Dire Straits person in the band. I left that, and then we kind of got back. I rejoined Marco Caviglia's band, and that became the Dire Straits Legacy, and we currently have 4 Dire Straits people and Trevor Horn in the band. We would have had 5 Dire Straits people, but God bless him, Jack Sonny passed away not very long ago. So.
Okay. But wasn't it right before that? It was just called Legacy, right?
No, it was always called Dire Straits Legacy, but then we decided to make or Phil Palmer and I thought, let's make an original record.
Oh, okay.
And we called it Legacy.
Okay, and that included Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers drummer Steve Ferroni, right?
Steve Ferroni. Well, he was in the Dire Straits Legacy up until last year or a couple of years ago. He was our drummer.
Oh, okay. So right now the lineup that we will hear tonight, is it Trevor Horn on bass and yourself
bass, yeah.
on keyboards,
yeah.
and
we've got Phil Palmer on guitar.
Okay.
And we have Danny Cummins on percussion and vocals, and Mel Collins.
Oh, Mel Collins. Oh, King Crimson, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Mel Collins and I go way back to I first met Mel Collins way back in when we were playing with Gallagher and Lyle together. That's when I met him in 1977. 77. Long time ago.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, Mel Collins has some German history. He played in a famous show band in Germany,
right.
for a talk show.
He lived here for 17 years or something now already.
Right. And you also actually, speaking of German, I read that you did something with Westernhagen.
I did. I played on an album, at least one, maybe 2, and I did a tour with them. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So what can the fans expect musically from the Dire Straits Legacy? Is it straight Dire Straits music?
Yeah, we when we made the Legacy record, we tried putting in a song, one that I'd written actually, called Jesus Street, which went down very well, but and then we kind of dropped it, and we've kind of forgotten about that record now. But now and again, people come and say, "I love that Legacy record," you know. So it's like records. When I make a record, I don't really want to listen to it because I've heard it so much, you know.
In 2021, you released a solo piano record called Backstory, and that album contains songs from your work with Dire Straits, then Mark Knopfler film score, Bob Dylan, and some other tunes. Was actually because of the year. Was this something you envisioned during the COVID period? So this was something that felt.
I was contacted by an Italian record producer who from a company called Ponderosa. First of all, to see if I would do a piano concert at the Milan Piano City, it's called, which is like a weekend where they invite piano players, and they have stages set up all over Milan. So initially I thought, no, I'm not doing that, because I'm kind of lazy really when it comes to stuff like that. But he was quite persistent, this guy, and then my wife sort of talked me into it eventually. So I sort of got my head down and thought about it, and he wanted me to play songs that I've been associated with, which I did for the Milan Piano City, and then he said, why don't you make a record? And I thought, no, I'm not gonna, because I've never harboured a desire to be a solo artist and make a solo album, but again, my wife persuaded me that would be a good idea, and it was. I've really enjoyed the process. In fact, it's now my favourite thing to sit down on a stage with a great big piano and play to people. I just played I did a charity show just what day is it today? It's Thursday. Yeah, Friday last week in Manchester, which is where I live actually. It's the first time I've done one in England, and yeah, I love it. It's just amazing.
We should all listen more to our wives.
Do what?
We should all listen more to our wives.
Well, not really, no.
Would you mind going through the songs of the album? Because I find it actually quite interesting, and actually it is as unplugged as it gets, so to speak. There's actually just piano. There's nothing else on, no strings, nothing. You know.
I put a little bit of vocoder as like a flavor.
Okay.
On one or two tracks, but yeah, it's just piano. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a I. It's a Dylan song, right? Yeah.
Excuse me.
The first number is from a Dylan period. Then, of course, Romeo and Juliet is Dire Straits.
Mm-hmm.
Big River. Where does that come from?
Big River is a Jimmy Nail song. Jimmy Nail is. Do you know? Do people know Jimmy Nail here? He's an actor. He's from Newcastle. He's from my neck of the woods, and but he's also had success as a pop artist.
Okay.
He's had several hits in England, maybe around Europe. I don't know. And one of them was a song called Big River, which actually I played on, and Mark Knopfler played on.
Oh, I see.
Also.
Okay. Okay.
We did them at Mark did it as an overdub. I did it as the maybe as an overdub. I can't remember, but yeah. So I played on a couple of his albums, I think, and that was one of the tunes. It's a great tune.
And then we have I Told You Lately That I Love You? It's a Van Morrison song that was actually made really popular by Rod Stewart later on. What's your association with this song?
Trevor Horn was. I work quite a lot with Trevor Horn these days.
Okay.
It's interesting that Trevor and I are from the same part of the world, the northeast of England, and we were actually born about 3 miles apart, but we didn't meet until about 6 years ago. Obviously, I was aware of him, he was aware of me, but we just didn't meet. But when we did, it was like, okay, well, let's. And I mean, I was just working last weekend, the weekend before last, with Trevor on a new project with Lol Cream, who was a big mate of his. So, what was the question? What was the original?
It was just what the association was with the song Have I Told You Lately.
Oh yes. So he was producing some tracks for Rod Stewart, and that was one of them. And it was during COVID, so I did my piano bit in my house in just outside of Manchester in Cheshire, and then he sang on it, and then I came down to do more on the record to London, and Rod came in to listen to the tracks, which is the first time I'd met him. And so I played on his record, but I hadn't met him. So that's the way it works with COVID. You know, everybody was kind of recording remotely.
Right.
Interestingly, Rod, when he was introduced to me by Trevor, he went to shake my hand, and when it was COVID, I hadn't shaken anybody's hand. So I said to Rod, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to shake Rod's hand. And I said, Rod, this is the first handshake I've done in about 3 months. And he said, it's okay, I'm wearing a glove.
So, how did you go about arranging all these songs for piano? And did you, in some cases, did you try to actually reharmonize some, or did you just stick to totally to the original?
No, I didn't stick to the original at all. For instance, I mean, how do you play a Bob Dylan song? It's almost sacrilege to play a Bob Dylan song instrumentally, because the words are everything, and particularly the words of I are absolutely mind-blowingly stunning. My favourite Bob Dylan song, as a matter of fact, even though I played on the original. But yeah, so finding a way to making the songs work on piano was an interesting experience. And there's at least one that I think of that I decided I had to reject, not a Bob Dylan song, but because just like I say, finding a way to make it work on piano. But I found a way to make I and I work, and I quite like it actually. It might be my favourite interpretation of a song on the record.
So License to Kill also Dylan song from the same.
That's a bit easier, yeah, because it's pretty basic. And interestingly, when I play that, and I played quite basically, you know, a little bit of arranging, but pretty much almost the way Bob would play it. Bob describes his piano playing as steam piano because he kind of hits it down, and it goes down really well. It's one of the songs that people say, "Oh, I love that Bob Dylan song," you know. So yeah.
So next one is Private Dancer,
Yeah.
which is Mark Knopfler originally wrote it, and decided it's for a woman to sing. So this whole Tina Turner thing started, right?
Recorded that with Dire Straits during the Love Over Gold session recording, and then when Mark came to sing on it, it was like we all looked at each other and thought, this is wrong, because it's obviously, you know, coming from a female point of view, perspective. So next thing, the manager, Dire Straits manager Ed Bicknell, had given it to Roger, what's his name, Tina's manager, and Tina was recording it. So we were invited, the whole excuse me, the Dire Straits band was invited to record it, but Mark decided not to go. He declined. So I was in the studio running through the band with the arrangement, because the producer had rejigged the arrangement, and when Tina walked in the room and sort of with that big smile, ding, lit up the room. I mean, she was an amazing person, and that was the beginning of my association with Tina. So after that, later on that day, she said, "Look, I'm doing a tour with I think it was a world tour, supporting Gregor Allman and supporting Lionel Richie."
Okay.
In the States. It was about 5 weeks, I think. And would you come and play with my band? So I thought, well, I'd kind of had a bit of a break from Dire Straits, and so I thought, yeah, I'll do that. And I did, and it was good fun. And the record, Private Dancer, the album, went to #1 during that tour, so around the world, particularly in the States as well. So it was a great time to be with her. And the party that night in San Antonio, Texas, was pretty memorable. I remember, last thing I remember is trays of tequila shots coming out. Great story with Tina. When we got to Memphis, which is her neck of the woods really, she grew up in Nutbush, which I believe is either a suburb of Memphis or nearby. The hotel that we stayed in was the Peabody, which is a famous very old hotel, and one which, when she was growing up, she wasn't allowed to be in because she was black. So she told me the story as we were arriving at the hotel, and she says, "I'm going to walk in here, or we're going to walk in here, me and her, we're going to sit down in reception and drink Cristal champagne." And that's what we did.
Wow, quite an experience. Great memories too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for Private Dancer, you stuck to you said the arrangements were different from what Mark Knopfler did, and then what Tina did a little bit, and then when you did the piano thing, what was your guide? Which of the two?
I was thinking of Tina's, and as I was working out how to play it, I was actually thinking, I knew Tina was ill. She's been ill. She had been ill for a long time, and I was thinking of it being a piece for her.
I see.
And that's the way I played it.
Great, great. So then we had Brothers in Arms, which obviously one of the most famous Dire Straits songs, right? And lent itself to a piano arrangement afterwards.
Yeah, but maybe not my favourite from I don't play it on my solo piano concerts, because when I play my solo piano concerts, I do maybe at least half, maybe more than half of them of my music. So I have to obviously prune the Legacy album.
I see. Then we have Going Home, the song from the Local Hero soundtrack.
Yeah, great tune. And of course I played on the original with Mike Brecker on saxophone and some other great musicians, Steve Jordan on drums, and of course it's every time Newcastle United, my team, walk out to the pitch, it's to that record. So I hear that record at every game.
That's great. Then Love Over Gold, which marks your beginning with Dire Straits, sort of. Right?
Yeah, that lends itself to a piano solo because there's a lot of piano on there. Yeah.
Then The North. I didn't know that song. What?
That's one of mine.
Oh, okay. That's an original song of yours. Okay.
Yeah.
And but you have recorded it for Legacy or just specifically for this?
I did. I wrote a song using the theme for that and made a song out of it on the Legacy record. I can't remember what it's called at the moment, but yeah. So it's a tune that came into my head actually when I was working on another tune. This is way back in the early 80s. I was recording something and I just sort of stopped and looked down at the floor, and the melody of The North just sort of came, the whole thing, the middle eight and the entire melody just sort of came to me out of nowhere in the few minutes that I just sort of stopped playing something else, and the whole thing just came past me. And I guess it was around the Local Hero sort of time, so it's got that Celtic sort of vibe going.
Oh, great! It's a great song. Really. And then the last song, Your Latest Trick, Dire Straits. Also, great classic song, obviously.
Yeah.
So now you're on tour, over like on major tours, it's over 40 years now, right? Like from the early 80s to now, it's been like...
It's almost half a century, isn't it?
So what would you say has changed? Like in general, when you go on tour now, and also specifically from a keyboard player's perspective.
Well, I used to surround myself with keyboards with Dire Straits. I can't remember how many, but that because in those days that was pre-MIDI, and I don't know if people know what MIDI is, but MIDI is a way of connecting one keyboard to another, so you can play this one, but it's actually playing that one. And we didn't have that in the early days with Dire Straits, but I quickly latched onto it when it did start to come out, and I had my grand piano during the Brothers in Arms tour. I had it modified with a MIDI strip beneath the keys, so I could actually get the real piano to trigger other keyboards, which was good. But now I use, to keep things simple with this Legacy band, because we don't tour on the same scale, whether financially, or we don't play to 40,000 people. We sometimes play to 10, but I keep things very simple. So I use a Yamaha motif, which I use for piano and all of the sounds, and a Hammond B3, and a vocoder, which I use to supplement the vocals. And I'm the person who sings "I want my,"
okay.
but I play it through the vocoder,
okay.
and it so it sounds good.
Okay, so that's pretty refreshing. I would say that you're still like using the actual keyboard sound, because these days many people like go on all these virtual instruments and like use Apple main stage on stage also.
Well, in the Dire Straits Legacy, we have another keyboard player, and he uses that.
Okay.
And so he's got one or two. So he does a lot of the sounds. So he's the supplementary keyboard player.
Okay.
I stick to mainly piano, but and Hammond.
And so when you play on stage these days, do you still use the wedges, or you work with in-ear monitoring?
To keep things simple, I use in-ears linked directly, plugged into my Yamaha Motif.
Okay. Oh.
Which is the same keyboard player, same keyboard as Stevie Wonder uses on stage. Actually, it's exactly the same. Interestingly. So, just to keep things simple, I do that. And I have a wedge also, to which I get to hear the rest of the band.
I see.
So yeah, but everyone else, and sometimes I use the in-ears like everyone else, But yeah, so it's in-ears basically.
Okay. Well, Alan, this has been a fantastic interview. I thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I wish you all the best for your current tour and all future endeavors. And again, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.